Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Simon Lucey on, and he's the founder of Hype Collective. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Looking forward to having a bit of chat. Simon, do you want to jump straight in and tell everyone a bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I run an agency called Hype Collective, which is my day job. So I founded it 4.5 years ago. We're specialists at marketing to students and young people. So spend a lot of time working with clients that want to target 16 to 24-year-olds, either through kind of influencers or events or kind of researching that audience. And yeah, we're now at the stage where there's like 12 of us full time at Hype, and then quite a lot of kind of part timers, freelancers, that sort of thing. And we work with thousands of students each year. And then we also have a sister company, which I'm also a director of, which is Hard Numbers, which is a B2B PR agency, which I'm less involved with on a kind of day-to-day operational level, but there's about 20 of that, 25 of them over at Hard Numbers as well.
Wow. So marketing and PR then is your bread and butter.
Yeah, 100%. So I kind of fell into it straight out of university. I was one of those annoying ticket sales guys at uni selling tickets, trying to convince you to go to a club night that you didn't really want to go to. And actually, the company that I was working for at the time got approached by BlackBerry mobile phones, which shows my age. And it was my job to go around uni campus trying to convince students that touchscreen was just a fad and it wouldn't take off. And that you'd all be back to BlackBerry in no time. And it was a tough gig. So,
I can imagine.
but that was my first experience of kind of like I guess any form of marketing or sales. And then I kind of fell into a few different sales roles, all with like kind of selling marketing services, I guess. And then launched out on my own. Yeah, well, 4.5, nearly 5 years ago, which
Wow.
scary for me.
So what did you study at university?
I did politics and philosophy at Cardiff, which I loved Cardiff, loved going there. I don't remember a huge amount about my course, I'll be honest. But I met some really good people. I edited the student magazine when I was at uni. And I always say that was the best decision I made for my career. In fact, my business partner I met editing the student magazine. So our relationship hasn't really changed. He still makes everything look beautiful, and I shout loudly and try and get people to do things. So but yeah, met loads of people through that, and that was probably the most useful thing for me that I got out of uni was the network I met.
Yeah, I mean that's always an interesting point. I personally value going into straight to work opposed to going to
Yeah.
university. I think that's my sort of standpoint. But people that have said to me they valued university often say they didn't necessarily value the degree they did, but like you, they value the network. And is that your point of view you stick with?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was, if I had a kid who was considering their decisions at 18 now, I don't know what advice I would give, but it's very different when it's this much money. It was a lot cheaper back in my day. So that I had a good experience and good return on it, but I don't think that means that it's for everyone. And I also don't think at these rates, I think it's something that you need to think a lot more
Mm.
about. Also, I think like the level of opportunities straight out of school now, when God, I sound like a dinosaur, but when I was going to uni, like apprenticeships just meant that you were, there was a very limited number of trades that took on apprentices. Now you can
Mm.
go an apprentice for, Microsoft or whatever.
Mm. And so when you're hiring for either of your businesses, is that something you look at? Do you particularly care if somebody has a degree versus someone that doesn't have a degree?
It's a bit of a strange answer to that one. So in principle, I don't care at all. However, at Hype, we specialize in marketing to students and primarily university students.
Hmm.
So actually, weirdly, if you didn't go to uni, there's quite a lot that you don't know about uni.
Yeah.
So like we have this talent pipeline so we employ each year over 1,000 students, either as brand ambassadors or content creators. And that's the main way that we recruit people, because for example, Anna, one of the account execs that we work with, she worked for us for 6 months as a brand ambassador, then started writing for us while she was a uni student. She'd already worked with us for over 18 months before she graduated.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of knew the culture, she knew like how we work, she'd met us loads. So we have I guess a slightly different talent pipeline to most organizations.
I think it's really interesting what you're doing. And we've actually had another founder who's got a very similar company to yours on the podcast previously. But apart from your two companies, I feel like I could be wrong here. It's a kind of new segment to marketing, or a relatively new segment to marketing, focusing specifically on uni students at universities. Is that fair in saying that?
I mean, having worked in it for a while, it's targeting students isn't new. It's a bit of a targeting students is quite an anomaly in that.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, like, if you go, there's a crossroad in Manchester where all the Uni of Manchester and Man Met students will walk past you on a day, and there's no other audience in the world where you can get like 50,000 of that audience just to walk past you in a single day, unless maybe you go to a festival. So there's always been, like, freshers fairs have been around forever. That's an old established way of marketing to students. But I think it's probably a growing segment, and the ways of targeting them has evolved. Like 10 years ago, it was just take a pop-up banner and stand on a street corner and tout your wares or whatever. But now it's a much more complicated and advanced market. But I do think it's interesting. It's not just students. You're seeing lots of agencies set up. One of the changes that I've seen is that accessing certain channels is actually getting easier. So running, for example, paid Facebook ad campaigns, the practicality of it is getting easier and easier.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to justify our worth as an agency, if we were just to become a specialist paid Facebook ad agency, it's really difficult to justify a significant fee. And it becomes a bit of a race to the bottom. So you're seeing lots of agencies look for different ways of articulating their difference. And I think one way of that is looking at specific audiences and building up an expertise in that audience. So I saw one the other day that was specializing in marketing to over 60-year-olds, which I think is completely sensible, because typically they're the cohort within society that has the most disposable money income. So I can imagine there's lots of brands out there that want to particularly target your over 60-year-olds and have that expertise.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And so working in marketing, what are the kind of key skill sets that you think somebody that's going into this industry, and specifically what you're doing, would need to kind of acquire?
I'm going to reference somebody that I met who was the creative director at Google. And
Wow.
he said there's two skills that I can't recruit for at Google. People who can write well and people that can sell well.
Wow.
And it's not at all that, like, obviously, there's shortages of people that can code and tech and all that sort of stuff. But I think those are the two skill sets that are hardest to find: people that can sell, and people that can sell by writing, basically. I think, like, one of the virtues of everyone is now a kind of a content producer and can video edit and shoot better content than we could ever have imagined. But one of the skill sets that's really declined is the ability to write well. And I think it's something that is very worth investing in, because that will, I don't think, ever be automated or replaced, that ability to write.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard this a lot recently, actually, from other entrepreneurs that have started their companies. Having somebody that can write is like a secret weapon almost. That copywriting skill is just really, really sort of, there's very few people out there. So anyone listening to this that wants to get into this kind of world, or any world really at this moment, that is a fantastic skill to learn. Have you got any sort of maybe tips about how to do that, or places you'd go to learn that maybe?
So, I mean, I'm not sure on places. I might. I do know somebody who will know, so maybe I'll defer that question to them and send you some links to put in the
sure
in the comments, if that's okay.
Yeah, great.
my main advice is that it doesn't need to be formal. Like, we're looking for people that can write witty, interesting, compelling stories, or like short copy. So I like, one thing that I always think is, as a young person, you think that writing is, like writing a letter to, the monarch or whatever.
Mm.
Where we're looking for people that can write relatable, real copy and actually take away the formality and be witty in their prose. So that would be my main thing as a tip, and I will defer the links to other places to learn about how to do that better to later.
Yeah, sure, no problem. And if somebody's thinking of going into this world of marketing, would you say there's any key personality traits that you see in people around you that help them to succeed?
So I'm going to reference another one. So
Mhm.
my business partner Paul, he has this kind of welcome induction talk that he does to all new employees, and he always says, so he's 33, I think, and he always says in his recruitment the key thing that he's looking to avoid is recruiting a 24-year-old version of himself.
Okay.
So Paul, at 24, thought that the solution to getting promotions and to getting new roles was to be the smartest person in the room and to think innovatively and think outside the box. What he didn't understand at that stage was that actually the most important thing is to be reliable and dependable.
Mm.
If you get the reputation within the agency of being reliable and dependable, that is way more valuable, because what happens is, when things go wrong, that's when things get noticed. And if you can be reliable and dependable, all the brilliance can be learned, and you pick that up through experience. But I think that having the ability to be hyper organized, the biggest challenge about working in an agency is that you will have lots and lots of projects all running simultaneously, and it's very complicated, and you will be spinning lots and lots of plates. If you can keep it simple and focus on keeping those projects spinning, I think that's the most important skill set that I'd look for in a junior member of staff.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then let's talk about the industry in general. I think over the last few years, we've had a few people from marketing on the podcast, and it's been really interesting. But somebody threw out a really mad statistic. I don't know if you've heard this before, but there's something like 30,000 marketing agencies in the UK.
Yeah.
Now they all vary in size, but as an industry in general, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Do you see that remaining the case over the next few years, or do you think it might slow down growth wise?
So I'd say the reason there's lots more agencies is actually, I think 15 years ago, our clients would have wanted to work with a big established agency that was reliable. They would spend the vast majority of their budget with a single agency, and that agency would manage everything that they do. Today, with technology making it easier to work with lots of different partners, clients are much more willing to work with smaller agencies. So I think there is definitely more people working in marketing today than there were 15 years ago, but it's not proportional to the number of new agencies there are. Like I thought when I set up Hype that my biggest issue would be brands wouldn't want to work with a startup agency that they'd never heard of. But our first clients were like Co-op, Adobe, big brands that were willing to invest their budget in a small startup agency because they bought into the expertise that we have. So that's a trend that I've noticed, and I don't think that's going away anywhere soon, because like ways of working have got more efficient. So one single marketing manager can manage 5 or 6 agencies quite easily now, whereas before it would be much easier for them to just manage one.
Sure.
And then in terms of developments with the agency, I think you'll see within agency world, I think the whole marketing world will continue to increase, but I think there'll be certain pockets that increase disproportionately quickly. Probably the one that I think will increase the most is any agencies related to producing content. Brands are like under huge pressure now to constantly produce content. Like, 10 years ago, they would have had a handful of channels that they were operating plus their website. Now they're producing content for Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, their email, their website has to be updated every 5 minutes. So there's like a real drive from brands that they need a huge volume of content to be produced. So I think that's really important. And so I think that's probably a big area of growth within the agency kind of landscape.
Interesting. So a load of opportunity coming up in content production. We're talking video, maybe audio, things like podcasts. All of that's going to grow and grow, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually, interestingly, affordable video. So you'll have the same number of people making a big TV ad. I don't think that's going to, in fact, it may even decline as less people watch TV. I think you'll have a huge number of people that want, 30 videos for TikTok, and they don't want to spend £1 million on it. They want to spend, a more realistic amount of money. So it's that sweet spot of creating stuff that can be used on a daily basis, as opposed to having like one massive big splash campaign that might, before you might have made one advert that you stick on the TV and in cinema. Now that same budget is being cut up to work on lots of little projects.
Interesting. And for you, what would you say has been the biggest positive that you've taken away from working in the marketing industry so far?
It's the people, I think. Like, I think it's a really creative world. If you're interested in meeting loads of creative people that are passionate about like a craft, so whether it's graphic design or photography or video or whatever it is, like, I just love mixing in those circles, and it's a great excuse to meet those creative people. And I think it's an industry, yes, you can earn good money in marketing, but the people that get into it often get into it because they're passionate about that craft. And I think that means that you get a really interesting group and an interesting, like, diverse mix as well.
And on the flip side of that, what's been the biggest challenge so far?
Running an agency. No, it's I think obviously navigating COVID was difficult. We went into COVID, primarily 70% of our revenue came from events before COVID, so that was obviously tricky. I think like the challenge of running your own agency is sometimes, it's quite cliche, but when it's difficult, you can't go and share necessarily everything with everyone in the team, because they don't need to hear that. So I think that's been the biggest challenge for me within my career, is the difficult days, kind of who you share that with and how you talk about that. And I'm really lucky I've built up a network of like mentors and trusted people within the industry. But I think you have to proactively look out and find those people, basically.
And tell us a bit more about Hype Collective. Now, how does it work? I'm really interested in the student marketing place. I think that's a really interesting take on it.
Yeah, so our commitment is that every campaign that we run is co-created with students. So we think that creates positives for the students in that they get paid, they get work experience. I think it's a really tough time to be a young person today. So they, at a very minimum, they will leave with their bank account a small amount higher than it was before, and something to talk about in an interview and put on their CV. The benefit for the client is that they're getting a campaign that their audience has been involved with. So you tend to get some, I'm 34 and not that old, but constantly reminded how out of touch and how old I am when I'm working with students. So I think the client is getting something that is crafted by the audience, whether it's an event or an influencer campaign or a piece of content, and kind of more authentic in how it's produced. And quite simply a little bit more cost effective as well, because you're not paying, what we'll do is we'll partner up a student with a kind of qualified expert, but the student is doing most of the work, who is largely cheaper than the qualified expert. So the client is getting a product that is authentically created by the audience that they're looking to target, but also potentially a little bit more cost effective as well.
Interesting. Would you still go into this industry knowing everything you know now?
Well, if I couldn't be a footballer, a model, uh, which I'm assuming I wouldn't be able to do. Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great industry. I think it's probably an industry. When I was 18, I had no clue about the scale or size of it, and the variety of roles on offer.
Mm.
So I think marketing is an industry that most people fall into. And that's a bit of a shame, because I think there's loads of people who don't even consider it and don't really know kind of what it entails. I always thought it was just making big TV commercials, which is obviously a very cool and very significant percentage of the industry, but it is not at all the majority. The majority is other stuff.
Sure. And then maybe just a final piece of advice for anyone thinking about going into marketing. What would you suggest they put on their CV or their LinkedIn to sort of attract anybody's attention?
I think the main thing is try and speak to people within the industry and just pick their brains. So I think people are more willing than you think to give up their time to mentor and coach people that have, and you don't need to, if you're just starting out, you don't need the CEO of the world's biggest agency or biggest brand to coach you. Like, somebody who is 3 or 4 years ahead of you in the process would be super useful. I always think that's the most important thing. And then in terms of stuff that you can put on, like, I guess any experience that you can get, if you've got experience growing your own following on Instagram or TikTok, or if you've got experience writing a blog or editing video, do that. Like, experience doesn't have to be just professional experience. If you love travel photography, stick it in. Like, we want to know people that kind of understand audiences and are creative and care about their craft. So that's not always kind of paid work. It can be hobbies and side projects as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure. And where can people find you and your business and what you're up to?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn most. So that's, my name's Simon Lucey, Lucey. Hype Collective, we're best on TikTok. Have a search on TikTok or Instagram. And we've got the website. Any young people that are interested in kind of work opportunities, you can register for them. There's kind of always a feed of them on the website. So it's hypecollective.co.uk for that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon.
Cool.